Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Palumba. Now today we're going to be wrapping up our discussion on the movie business. Today we're going to be talking about shrinking the window. We're going to be talking about dynamic pricing. We're going to be talking about a lot of real-time issues that the movie theater industry is facing right now. There are pressures that are coming in from the movie studio system. There are pressures that are coming in from the movie platform situation that we've got going on here. There are pressures from, well, other forms of entertainment that are also kind of hitting into the movie theater system. And so there's a lot at stake here for movie theaters as they try to kind of make sure that they last for the foreseeable future. Now, not to be an alarmist, I do think movie theaters are likely not going anywhere. I don't think they're all going to shut down. I don't believe that. None of my research has illustrated that. Movie theaters absolutely exist for a reason, but hopefully, as all of you've noticed here, the media industry doesn't really shut down product categories or spheres or particular industries. Rather, they evolve. They change, there are manipulations that go on, and there are slivers that are cut. Network television never went anywhere, right? If we think about 30 years ago, back to our discussion about TV business, cable channels didn't oust NBC. We still have NBC, we still have ABC, we still have TNT, we still have ESPN. We just have more fragmented audiences, but generally speaking, these particular media offerings are really not going anywhere. So with that said, let's get started. Whose side are you on? Theaters versus distributors. I have loved following this particular issue. I think it's absolutely fascinating for the movie industry. I can remember having to be so patient when I was younger for Batman to come out on DVD or for a particular toy to come out from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. And so it's really fascinating to think about all of this being shrunk or shortened for that matter. If Jurassic Park 10 is released, which my grandchildren and your grandchildren may see, how should it be shown? Well, if you're a movie theater executive, if you run AMC Entertainment, you're probably going to say, well, we'd rather exhibit it for 8 months. After all, Universal, who makes Jurassic Park, gets about 80% of the cut the first week of the box office. The first week of the box office, movie studios generally get about 80%. Movie theaters don't get at least half of the revenue up until about 4th or 5th week. So to be clear, in the first week, 80% of the box office revenue typically goes to the studios. By the 4th or 5th week, how many people are watching Jurassic Park in theaters? Far less. So movie theaters at that point wind up earning more as per the contract, and movie studios earn less. But by that point, the movie studios don't really care anymore. They've made their bang. Okay. Movie studio executives, an executive from Universal Studios would say, we want Jurassic Park debuted on iPods, TVs, movie theaters, laptops, SVODs, anywhere, all at the same time, on the same day. Let's go. That's what they're interested in. These are separate priorities because the movie theater business has to protect itself against other platforms. Movie studios, on the other hand, are very eager to capitalize on buzz. They are very, very eager to capitalize on buzz, on hype. There are far too many entertainment products and services bouncing around the inner walls of people's minds and hearts. And so, you know, it's important to capitalize on buzz while it's out there. Joker, which just came out almost 2 months ago at this point, has already been not forgotten, but it's been replaced with Frozen 2 that just came out. So very, very quickly, people forget, people move on, people go on to the next thing. And so you have to capitalize on the buzz and hype that you have. Let's keep going. So, is the movie theater business profitable? We've been talking about how important it is to make sure that your movie property is marketed properly and to anticipate issues with movie studios, issues with movie theaters. So is any of this worth it? Well, you'd be surprised. 78% of movies do lose money. 22% are profitable. This was based on a sample from 1984 to 1996. Movies. Let me say this, though. I actually think that these percentages are going to change. I think, especially if a study was done over the course of the last decade, I don't think it's 22% of movies that are profitable anymore. I actually think it's quite higher because movies that are now in movie theaters are blockbuster films. And a lot of those movies are doing very, very, very well. Average ticket price in 2009 for a movie was $7.50. 2018, $9.11. So that is about a 20% hike if I'm doing my math correctly. So it's shooting up. 35% of profitable movies earn 80% of the total profit. This is a winner-take-all strategy. And so it's kind of in line with the Pareto rule of 80-20, right? 80% of sales come from 20% of consumers. 80% of total profit revenue come from 35% of movies. Just about. MoviePass seeks to disrupt this model, although MoviePass recently went out of business, but it has led to ramped up loyalty programs at AMC and Regal movie theater chains. After all, these movie theater executives and companies are very concerned about learning more about their consumers. They now have to, because now they are up against platforms. There are platforms that are disrupting the windows, and additionally they have pressures from movie studios to allow them shorter windows. So movie theaters really need to know their audiences and to try to get as many people into movie theaters in order to substantiate windows that have been agreed upon. Let's keep going. Shrinking the window. So with the movie window business, we have theaters, we have DVDs, we have pay TV, cable channels, SVOD. This is usually the order in which we consume movies, isn't it? First, they debut in movie theaters, usually about 1 to 2 months. We also have DVDs, right? That's kind of the next jump for a movie. Then it goes to pay TV. Would you pay $2.99 or $3.99 on your DirecTV or Time Warner Cable to watch the latest and greatest Harry Potter movie? And then it may move on to cable channels, and then finally to SVOD. But this is changing. We're seeing a lot of movies jumping from theater to SVOD. We're seeing a lot of movies from movie theaters go from DVD to then SVOD, or go from DVD to cable channels. We're seeing a lot of jumping around with these windows. Every major studio, but for Disney, has worked to convince theater owners to release movies on demand for $30 to $50 a rental within weeks of a theatrical debut. They've even said that movie studios would cut movie theaters in on revenue from this. But movie theaters owners still want a 90-day window. They're still pining for that. They still want that. There's been no agreement. It's really a contentious issue right now, but hopefully there will be some sort of agreement as we move forward here. This particular movie theater in Westwood Village in LA is gorgeous. I've been to it. It is out in UCLA. It's right by UCLA in Los Angeles. It is where they actually shot Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's one scene that takes place there, in fact. Let's keep going. What's in a film ticket? On opening weekend, theaters only get about 20 to 25% of the budget. This reverses over time. The fourth weekend, the theater may get about 70 to 80%, and I had stated this earlier. Popcorn. Your popcorn, your $15 popcorn, your $10 popcorn has about an 800% markup. So that $10 bag of popcorn likely costs maybe about $1, $1.20, $1.50 ultimately to make. However, concession stands help keep theaters alive, and in fact, it's where movie theaters make most of their revenue. But last year, alcohol eclipsed popcorn as the #1 concession. What's in a film ticket? Well, 10% on distribution of movie, delivering it to the theaters via video on demand. 25% is to pay for marketing of a film. That is by far and away the most expensive portion of putting together a movie. And of course, there are always exceptions to this, but marketing has become very expensive. Remember, movies are competing against everything now. And so you need to spend more to cut through the noise. 5 to 8% for actors, 10% for recouping production itself, 5% for the studio itself. $1 of box office translates into about $1.75 of total revenue over the course of a decade. And so it's important for box office hype to be capitalized upon, because people who had a good experience in the movie theater, people who enjoyed the movie, are likely to spend more money on, Avengers clothes and Avengers DVDs and Avengers other things. And that's really what that last bullet is talking about. That $1 of box office revenue, can translate into about $1.75 of total revenue over a decade. So chances are your movie theater audiences may be inclined to spend more on products related to your movie. Let's keep going. Dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing. This is something that was actually recent. This was actually about a few months ago. It came out in Variety. AMC CEO Adam Aron, who is a genius, by the way, is seeking to charge a premium for movies that are highest in demand, and other movies will be cheaper. So they're going to test this in Boston, San Diego, a few other places. The gap between blockbuster superhero movies and smaller films has widened dramatically. Mid-majors like Yesterday and Crawl experienced boosts in ticket sales during slower times of the week. 3. However, are there issues here? And I have all the considerations that I've thought of, that the magazine article also offered as well. We have issues here, don't we? Is it fair to price movies differently? Is there anything to that? For one, it's hard to put a price on quality. A lower price might signal to consumers that the film may not be good. Apple TV right now, the SVOD service itself, is priced at $4.99, and Apple itself arguably is a luxury good. And so some people have stated that they price themselves too low because now they're kind of perceived as a nothing SVOD service. Could the same be said if you priced A Quiet Place low or other movies lower? Second, how do you price movies? A Quiet Place was a sleeper hit, right? This was a movie that nobody really anticipated was going to be a hit. In fact, it resonated with quite a few people. And so if we really think about it here then, you don't really know sometimes how art is going to resonate with people. That's an issue. How might a distribution company also, if you're Disney or Warner Brothers, would you tell John Krasinski of A Quiet Place that your movie really isn't that valuable? It's not going to do well, probably. And so we're going to price this lower. Is that fair to do? Probably not. It is possible to lower a ticket price after a few weeks, but if we do that, then people may just wait. We already have people waiting for movies to come out on SVOD services, on cable channel, on pay TV. You may teach people to avoid the movie theater a little bit more until after a movie has been in a movie theater for a few weeks. Theaters will have to police moviegoers as well to ensure they don't purchase a cheaper ticket and see a more expensive movie. So this particular issue is rife with a lot of obstacles, but it continues to be a fascinating one in the movie theater business and movie studio business for that matter as well. Let's keep going. Growth strategy. So this is kind of where I want to end the lecture on. It's important to kind of think about where the movie theater and movie business industry is going. What opportunities lie in front of the movie industry? More co-financing is occurring. They are considering more international distribution partners to cut down on risk of investing in movies. And additionally, and I didn't really mention this at the beginning of this lecture, but it does behoove domestic film studios to partner up with international film studios or financing companies, because they have cultural acumen, right? They have cultural expertise. And so if Batman is going to be in Tokyo, which he was in one of the last Batman movies for a solid half hour, I believe it was Hong Kong actually, he was in Hong Kong, tracking down a criminal, it would behoove me as Warner Brothers to have co-financed this movie with a Chinese company, or with a Hong Kong film studio for that matter. They know the location better. They know what may work for Hong Kong or Chinese audiences that may want to see Batman in another place, but for, rather than Gotham City. And so it makes sense to do this not just from a financial perspective, but also spreading cultural risk. And I would argue that as well. Maximization of platforms. Movie studios, movie theaters need to think about how particular genres may fit on particular platforms. Considering genre and platform fit during movie shooting is also key here. If you know that your movie is going to be on a big screen versus it's going to be on an SVOD platform, that should influence the way in which you shoot the film. Erosion of the traditional window, platform distribution. It's important to examine which platforms may allow for greatest exploitation. Is your particular movie best on a television set? Is it best on a laptop? Can it work on a smartphone? Be mindful of all competition, not just from rival movie studios, but from SVOD studios as well. And so as we're kind of going through all of this here, it's important to take stock of how competitive and difficult it can be to navigate the waters in the movie business industry. It's an industry in which there's a lot of passion and a lot of determination and a lot of failure and a lot of disputes, but it's a passionate kind of industry that will, rise above all of this and will continue to be one of the hallmarks of the American experience for sure. Well, that's all the time we have on Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.